Let's hop on into some chats.
All right. Marsha R. wants to know, Dave, I must ask you a question.
Yes.
Oh,
Looking back on your liberal times, can you give your opinion on this extreme shift to crazy?
It doesn't make sense because I don't see it necessarily as liberal. What I always thought of liberal was free speech and compassion towards other human beings. That's honestly how I saw it. I was raised in a house by parents who I wouldn't say were Democrats or Republican. They just kind of believed what they believed. They had a certain moral way, and they gave me those morals. That's all it was. It wasn't that they were diehard on either side. I was fairly liberal because, you know, you're into music, you're young, you're into drugs, and that sort of goes with the territory, you know, in a lot of ways. But when you get a little bit older, you start looking at life a little bit different, and that's kind of why I began to shift to look at all sides of it. But the way that I would look at this shift, this has nothing to do, I believe, with politics. I believe that this fully has to do with division and people who are completely and utterly brainwashed into believing that something is so evil that they have no ability to put their own thought into it. And what they do is it's as simple as, and I say this about men, not trans people in general. This is not about, I do believe that there's just people who take easy shortcuts and pretend to be victims or have had a life of victimhood just to get ahead or just to be a comic or just to be this. I think that people do it for likes. I think that people do it for acceptance. And I think it's because people do it because mob mentality is a way that they see group friendship because they don't really have a lot of friends. So they think that they're part of something, but they're not. They're more invisible than ever because they don't stand out and they don't have anything unique about them.
That's a good point.
Yeah. It's funny that you describe it that way because the left, it's kind of like the party of the left you.
Correct.
Right? You're more of, like you said, you're talking about free speech. You really don't hear a lot of talk about free speech on the left right now. You hear it from the right, and it's become a far right position, it seems, right now to talk about free speech. And it's like, well,
yes.
when did this basic understanding of what our country, one of the things our country was founded on, when did that become far right?
Well, they talk about it quite a bit of the left. They just want to
limiting
squash it. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
they want to squash Dave Chappelle. They want to squash comics. And that's one thing that bothers me personally. Musicians, artists, if anybody is doing something like that, that is a performance.
Yeah.
That should only be taken as that and nothing more. And part of the idea of hate speech is like, okay, I may disagree with a lot of people on here because I hear there's no such thing as hate speech. I do think there's hateful speech. I do think if you pull up to a bus stop and yell the N-word at people, it's a hateful thing to do. It doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. It doesn't mean that it's not legal. But it's not nice. It's a shitty thing to do. And I think that you should have morals not to do those things. But they try to act like the only thing conservatives want to do is to push this kind of hate speech narrative where it's like, I can say anything horrible. That's not what they're saying. They're just saying, let us enjoy something. Let us laugh. Let us go back to how we were. Let us have movies we enjoy. Let us have differences. Everything should not be a carbon copy of each other where we all are a group thinking in one way, because then there's no individuality. There's no art. There's nothing being made. There's no conversations to be had. So there's nothing there. So now we have extreme anger, and that's all we have. And that's what we're stuck in right now because we're buying into a giant machine and the highest, like the most elite people who want us to be separated.
Yeah, no, they definitely do. And I agree with your point that there are things that are hateful to say and things that are hateful to do. It's just that when we push back on it and you push back on it too, you're talking about legislating.
Correct.
Those things, right? Saying, no, you can't say that because it's hate speech, because then it's, well, you just defined it one way.
Yes.
Somebody else is going to define it another way, and then eventually we don't have, like, you have to boil it down to the lowest common denominator, and there's just things you can't say now. And
correct.
It's pretty much, you can support whatever the regime who's in power at the time says, and I don't want that on the Republican side either. Like,
No.
I don't want anybody to have full unfettered power, because I understand human nature enough that even the people that go in with the best of intentions can be corrupted and do things that ultimately will end up hurting, even though maybe they're even trying to help, right? I get that about human beings. So I want there to be some controls, But there is no such thing as hate speech from a legislative standpoint. It does not exist.
You're legislating thought, and
Correct.
hate speech. Hate really is the standard, though. That's important. It has to be allowed.
Yeah.
Because that's where ideas get debated. That's where the white supremacist gets shouted down, right?
Yes.
That's the sunlight,
Jordan
the
Peterson
disinfectant.
talks
That's
about that, yeah.
That's what's so important. It has to be allowed. If you don't, you're going to foster more of it. It's going to go in the shadows,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And so we know. The
One of
founders
those
knew
shadows.
that.
And that's kind of what I mean. I feel if there's hateful speech based on my own morality, not on what the government can tell me what what not to say. And if there's something that I say on stage where you go, I think that's hateful, it's like, no, it's a joke, and that's the reality of it. It's the intention of what my
laugh. I don't have to stay and listen to you or pay for a ticket.
I don't have to buy
Absolutely.
the ticket. I certainly don't have to buy the hot dog.
No.
Not
Well,
a
you
fan.
do.
Can I heckle though, Dave?
It's a free show with a hot dog.
Dare I heckle?
Yes.
$27 hot dog.
But it's like if you, it's the intention of what you're saying, not the interpretation, and that's the problem. Is when you actually hear people on a side say context doesn't matter. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because context matters completely.
But even the worst of hate speech is important too.
Of
'cause
course.
that's exposing that for the garbage that it is, and hey, support your position. You hate why?
Hey guys,
make a case.
look at this. That's what I want to do to it. I want to be like, hey, look. That's what this person believes.
Yep.
Look at what they're saying right now. I'm not going to shut them
This
up.
case doesn't hold water.
Why? Yeah, exactly. Why would I stop them in the midst of them showing us clearly who they are?
That's right.
Just let them do it and go, see? Yeah, we don't believe that.
Well, and you're allowed to hate me. I mean, that's part of being a comic or being in the spotlight. It's fine. You hate me. You don't like what I do. Good. I just don't really hate a lot of people because Tokenau and I talked a bit about this. It's like hating somebody takes so much energy.
It does.
And I just don't want to do it.
I can only hate about 700 people at a time.
And I got
701 is
I have like 4, and then I have like 4 I'd kill. Anyway, it's not important.
well, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah. Figuratively.
Do I get away with it? Because they're not allegedly.
Well, that's yeah. No, it's allegedly.
What if you get a pass for
Nope.
1? Oh, you're lucky.
9.
Watch Louder with Crowder live, Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Eastern.